Okay, we're going to start. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the personalized nutrition event hosted by Plug and Play today. So my name is Anjali. I'm part of the food division at Plug and Play. And before jumping into the topic of the day, I wanted to give you a brief overview of Plug and Play. So we are the largest open innovation platform in the world. We run over 60 accelerator programs a year in over 35 locations and 17 industries. We also have a very strong network of VCs, universities, startups, and over 400 corporate partners. Our team here is part of the food division, and we are also very proud of our growing ecosystem. So here you can see our current partners, and thank you so much for those who can join us today. Next slide, please. Especially to ADM, one of the largest multinational food processing and commodities trading corporations in the world, who is hosting this event with us today and with one of our latest partners. Next slide. So our presence for the food program is also expanding globally with locations in Fargo, North Dakota, Milan, Italy, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Thailand, Chicago, Silicon Valley. We're very proud of it. Next slide, please. And here are some of the main focus areas of our food program. So as you can see, there is ingredient innovation, food packaging, data analytics, biotechnology, food supply chain, food safety, manufacturing. And today, we wanted to showcase one of the latest and very important food trends, personalized nutrition. Personalized nutrition is the next big opportunity for the food industry. By 2025, the market is predicted to be twice the size of the 2020 market. Consumers are more and more health conscious, and the demand for measuring tools, such as environmental sensors, connected devices, tracking apps, and genomic testing kits, for instance, are increasing very steadily. All these tools gather genetic information, dietary habits, physical activity, as well as sleeping behaviors, and environmental data about the consumer at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the level of accuracy of the data on the human body has been unprecedented. It enables consumers to find and adopt very personalized diet options based on their specific profiles and needs. As a consequence, we've seen the rapid growth of specific diets such as keto, paleo, plant-based diets over the past few years. The precision nutrition trend is only starting, and science has its role to play to make sure that the options on the table are safe and appropriate for each individual. So today, we'll try to understand the landscape of personalized nutrition a bit better and evaluate the potential options to make it more scalable. And now I'm going to let Jamie, our moderator, introduce herself and our panelists.
Thanks, Anjali. Hi, my name is Jamie Cohen, and I'm a ventures analyst on the food team here at Plug and Play. I'm so thrilled to introduce our panelists whose background and knowledge expands the entire scope of personalized nutrition. Their perspectives come from research universities, startups, and multinational corporations. I'll give you a quick run through on our schedule for today so you feel prepared. So we'll jump into about 45 minutes of panel discussion. I have some interesting questions prepared, but we also reserved a large chunk of time for Q&A from the audience. We really want this to be an opportunity to ask our expert panelists questions. So if you do have a question, please feel free to write it into the Q&A chat at any time. The earlier the better, and then we'll make sure we can get to it in the Q&A portion. We'll wrap up around 9:30. We have our 4 panelists here today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I think they'll be able to speak best to their role. So Janice, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about your background and what you're working on at ADM.
Good morning and afternoon, everybody. I'm Janice Rueda. My title is Vice President, Nutrition Science Business Development, and I work in our research division at ADM. And my role in particular is to liaise with our commercial groups, our marketing colleagues, and regulatory and government relations to develop new opportunities for healthy food ingredients and technologies in the marketplace around the world. It's exciting to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel, you bring a different perspective coming from a university. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and exactly what you're researching.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Daniel Jacobo. I am professor and researcher in Tecnológico de Monterrey in Guadalajara, Mexico. And also, I am working in the government. I am General Director of Technology Development and Science in Jalisco. So I'm going to give a perspective like the relationship between academia and the government and the industry for the development of these new personalized nutrition foods. And also I'm working as a researcher on the development of personalized nutrition for the prevention and treatment of different chronic diseases. So I'm going to talk about how to design new foods that can using ingredients that can work synergistically to prevent different chronic diseases like cancer and the metabolic syndrome.
Fascinating, thank you. And of course, at Plug and Play, we love our startups. So we have 2 startups here with us today. Alex, could you tell us a little bit more about your background and what you're working on at Baze?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. And excited to be here. So we were part of batch 7 in the food program at Plug and Play. And I've been with Baze, leading our US team, focusing on growth in our operations for about 2 years now. So we started in 2014 looking to solve a key challenge in the personalized nutrition space around identifying and understanding blood micronutrient levels. So we've created a program that uses blood-based biomarkers to understand what micronutrients an individual is deficient in. And then we target those deficiencies with a personalized supplement program. So our work has been really starting with blood-based diagnostics and then expanding from there. And then most recently, Baze was acquired by a partner of ours, Nature's Way, a large US supplement manufacturer. So now we're starting to go through the process of really identifying the opportunities when you bring a capability in startup like Baze in with a larger CPG who has a strong foothold in the market.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that more. I think our audience is particularly interested to understand how corporates can engage in personalized nutrition. So we'll dive into that more later. And last, we have Leahy from DayTwo. Could you give us a background? Hi.
You hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. I'm Leahy Siegel. I'm founder and CEO of DayTwo. And DayTwo uses technology that was developed by the Weizmann Institute of Science. It's an artificial intelligence algorithm that is based on the gut microbiome of people, together with additional personal and clinical parameters. And it uses that AI in order to really personalize the recommendations of what people should be eating, with a very clear outcome of balancing their blood sugar levels. Since that's what we're doing, our target audience is either healthy people who want to maintain the health and have kind of the aversion to disease, all the way to people with prediabetes and diabetes and the entire scope of metabolic disease. We're active in Israel, we're active in the US, and we have more than 70,000 people on the program. And primarily in the US, we sell through employers and payers.
Great, thank you. Now that we know a little bit about our panelists, we'll dive in with some of our questions. So as policy advisors, researchers, and founders, you each bring a very unique approach to this conversation. I'm curious to understand from each of your perspectives, what are some of the trends that are shaping or influencing personalized nutrition as it is today? Why now? Why is this kind of able to happen now in a way that it hasn't in the past? And open to anyone, whoever wants to kick it off.
Probably you should have signed.
Yeah. So we can I can kick off. So I think I would first start by saying I don't necessarily see the scenario right now as being like this is the right point in time versus last year or the year before. I think clearly we see that this is a developing market, and it all comes with kind of consumer awareness and adoption of the use of data more broadly, right? So I think kind of starting with your wearables, starting with your like survey-based kind of personalized approaches, I think consumers are understanding that they own more of the decisions around their health, and they're looking for smarter ways to make those decisions. And we're now at a time that there are a lot of options for consumers to kind of tap into to get the data they need to make smart decisions. So I think if anything, we're kind of continuing to kind of see an increase in the available tools and resources to get better data, and then a growing adoption of the use of that data and just an understanding of the impact of that. I do see another trend here is a strengthening of the research around impact. I mean, when I think about personalized nutrition, it's really the marrying of strong data with a clear kind of impact message and value to the end customer. And in the nutrition space, you look at large studies like the PREDICT study. I mean, you're clearly starting to see the kind of correlation between using data more effectively with stronger health outcomes. And that will continue to drive adoption and justify, in a lot of cases like Baze, a higher kind of entry barrier for generating that data. And then I think the last thing that we're starting to see is kind of the go-to-market kind of approach here is really moving away from, I think, a lot of the kind of high spend on performance marketing types of approaches and like let's compete from a kind of direct-to-consumer marketing perspective to really developing and building strong relationships with customers. So I think, I mean, from our perspective, success in this space is really developing like an authentic brand and credibility behind what you're doing to drive the trust amongst customers and understanding that you're there with them to drive improved health outcomes. So I think that kind of recipe of what success looks like in a pretty competitive space right now is starting to come together. And you're starting to see some brands really build loyalty and stickiness with their personalized capabilities.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, DayTwo was founded in 2015, but the science that we're based on is, started a few years even before that. And I remember when we just launched it, it was personalized nutrition was really just kicking off. And Alex, you mentioned the PREDICT clinical trial. It is a replication of the Weizmann trial that preceded it, right? And there's others, Stanford, that replicated that trial. I think at the end of the day, it has driven a lot of the science. I mean, personalized nutrition was around, nutrigenomics was around there, for a long time before that, trying to do this on DNA. But I think that the real change, Alex, as you said, became when we married data with accuracy, right? We were able to really predict in a very high accuracy what people should be eating. Again, giving the entire credit to the people here at the Weizmann Institute for bringing that center front and center. And we see now that there's national programs picking this up, right? The NIH about 6 months ago launched a 10-year very large research based on the Cell paper on the Weizmann trial. And I think that gave a very big boost to the industry. I'm not even saying DayTwo because we're just like following, trying to do our best to bring this to the consumers and to the market. But the science part that they brought to the table, I think, was really kicking off the market.
And that's where I think too, and you bring up a really great point. The elements for this market opportunity are starting to become more and more prevalent in the research community, but also in other sectors of the environment that really support its development. And, we're seeing a lot of focus on that research, and certainly from the NIH, but also other government agencies and academia as well. It's a really high funding priority in a lot of different places and in a lot of different technologies that will enable its greater accessibility in the market. And, there's also heavy media attention. So that can only serve to increase awareness among consumers. One of the challenges, I think, is what does personalized nutrition mean? What is precision nutrition? And I think there's that ambiguity, yet that's something that is going to be ironed out. And we see that not only as a hurdle to market development, but also as a really exciting opportunity, because what that means is there's a lot of white space out there, and it creates the opportunity for individual companies to find their own niche and, you know, define their own success. And so it's a really exciting time to be in this particular market. And, you know, we think with all the increases in visibility that are happening in lots of different sectors of the marketplace, it's really converging to make it an exciting opportunity for a lot of new businesses.
Yes, I will also add about the definition of personalized nutrition, because it is a very broad topic in the academia and also in the industry. I work with the nutraceuticals and with the functional foods market. I also have a startup that commercialize personalized supplements, but mainly focus on selecting ingredients that can work together to prevent different diseases. So I think that also personalized nutrition sometimes goes also into the thinking about the market on preventing and treating different and chronic diseases. And that's what we are trying to do also in the government. We are also putting a lot of money in the development of new foods and also in new startups here in Jalisco, Mexico, that can develop new foods that has this particular functionality. And also, I think that this has more impact when we think about agriculture, because most of the ingredients come from the ingredients that can provide some like nutraceutical or functional activity. They come from fruit, vegetables, and we are trying to improve also the use of those waste in the industry, because about 1/3 of the production in the agriculture is lost because of bad post-harvest practices. So we are trying to use those waste to generate new ingredients that has these new functionalities. So I think that personalized nutrition also goes in this topic of prevention and treatment of diseases. And probably the scalability is a topic that is, I think that is one of the biggest drawbacks of the of personalized nutrition.
Thank you. Yeah, scalability is definitely a huge question on my end. I would love if each of you could dive a little deeper into the challenges around scalability for personalized nutrition. I think you each bring a very unique perspective to that. Janice, you know, kind of from the government side, and then Alex and Leahy as startups. How do you make this accessible? Why don't we let Alex kick it off again, start from the top.
Yeah, and scalability has always been a kind of key question around how do we approach it, how do we prioritize it, because ultimately, I think Leahy can probably also kind of say, I mean, starting with a blood-based diagnostic isn't the easiest starting place, right? I think it's in terms of like driving kind of user adoption, kind of justifying kind of the increase in spend when there's kind of earlier entrants who use things like surveys. I think customers are still just even understanding and adopting personalized nutrition. So, I mean, I think where we are in the market is kind of those early adopters maybe started with those easy to enter types of programs. And now we're looking for more impact and kind of leading them to services like ours, right? I think scalability from a startup perspective and now from a CPG perspective is, I mean, after our proving our product, proving the impact is now becoming more of a focus for Baze. And I think what we're seeing is that the first challenge is just providing and supporting customers and understanding what data is impactful for helping them make nutrition decisions, right? And I think at Baze, what we're starting to see is, I think blood is going to be one piece of that puzzle. And what we want to support and facilitate is the aggregation of as much meaningful data as possible and providing the tools and analytics to let them use that effectively. So starting to expand sort of the top of that funnel in terms of what data comes in. And then also it's meeting customers where they're at in terms of making choices around how do they use that data to be healthier. So in us starting with supplements, it was always looked at as this is the first step. I mean, it's an easy kind of one-to-one. You're deficient in vitamin D. We can provide you a vitamin D supplement, but I think we also see ourselves as serving this broader personalized nutrition arena in food is key. And I think we have a very food first mentality in terms of our long-term vision. What I do want to say in terms of scalability, and I think through the plug and play program, we were fortunate to connect with a number of leaders, whether in both CPG as well as kind of grocery retail. I do think in those conversations, the natural tendency was almost to start to think about personalization, as Daniel mentioned, from a manufacturing standpoint. And I think as we go through those conversations, I think there's a lot of low hanging fruit when you think about what customers are even looking for that they can already address with their existing portfolios. So I think my thinking around scalability when it comes to larger corporations has shifted quite a bit, because I do think there are a lot of needs amongst consumers that aren't being addressed that just data and transparency can solve. And you think about people who are looking for addressing dietary restrictions or allergies. I mean, I think there's simple improvements to labeling or SKU indexing and on e-commerce platforms that can help serve a lot of those needs already with existing products. So I think what we're starting to understand is there's also a spectrum in terms of investment in personalization that can have impact. So from one end of the spectrum, can understanding nutrient deficiencies inform R&D and product development strategy, or more simply, how do we better label or promote or market products that meet really kind of a broader set of needs that customers are looking for more personalization in?
Thanks. Leahy, any insights into kind of what your experience as far as scaling has been with DayTwo?
Yeah, so the easiest part was, just going out there into the market. This is what I also liked about this research, that it really harnessed the data in a very actionable way, really through a black box. So not trying to explain how the gut microbiome influences this or that, or how certain biometrics are influencing it, but just when you look at it through the machine learning algorithm, it captures the signals and gives you the outcome of what you should be eating or what is the right combination. And that allowed us to really go into the market really fast without a lot of deeper understanding into why. This is what it is. So B2C was the easiest part, but it was the low-hanging fruit, the early adopters. It did open the path to collecting a lot of data that helped us go into the B2B. I think at least for the solution like DayTwo, which is personalized nutrition, really just letting people choose the right foods. We're not providing the food, we're just providing the recommendations. So they can walk into any restaurant, pull up the menu and get the DayTwo score on real foods that they're eating, with all the surprises on things you didn't think you could eat, and you can. It led the path to do a B2B play. So we have, the HMOs in Israel signed up for it, and in the US, we're really looking into the payers and self-insured employers, those who are really taking care of people's health, because of the actionability on blood sugar and the way it's connected to metabolic disease. But to the point of, how we take this further, and, all the CPGs, at the end of the day, people interact through an app, right? And this, we do provide consultation and dietitian support, but they have an app. The day to day, every day, people are accessible to all their recommendations through the app. And then when we partner with grocery chains or restaurants, they can really just pull it up. It's a database. We can put anything into the database. And it was we were once in a very interesting discussion. I won't say what the CPG company was, but we actually showed them that when there's a certain food or a certain bar, be it a protein bar, I will get different scores on this protein bar, even though the nutrients of 20 grams of protein are the same across all these different combinations. But the combination, on some of them I will score well, and on some of them they will spike my blood sugar levels. Now they're all healthy, right? They pass the healthy food test, but they need to be personalized for me. So I think the next step is really collaborating in a way that all this data just flows to the people who are using our services through the app, and then expanding it this way.
Thanks. Janet?
Yeah, I would just build to that. One of the really exciting opportunities we see are developing the enabling technologies that make personalized or precision nutrition accessible to the widest possible range of consumers, and taking it from that niche market to something that's a staple with respect to managing health conditions and really having a positive impact on public health. And so we're getting to that point, and I think a lot of these research initiatives are really going to accelerate that process. But it really comes to both assessment tools that are not invasive or minimally invasive for consumers, but then also delivery of products. And there are some supply chain opportunities and some logistics things to get through, but it can be a really great opportunity for brands to provide solutions to consumers who are looking to address specific goals within their health and lifestyles. And we're working on a lot of different fronts, and in particular the microbiome, where we see that as the potential to really be the next step forward in this field of precision nutrition. That's where we see the real opportunity is for developing these personalized nutrition opportunities to support the microbiome and its optimal functionality.
Thanks. Daniel, I'm curious what your perspective, being that you are, in a lab researching and kind of working with the government as well. How do you see the technologies that you're seeing in the lab being able to kind of scale into being a widely consumed product or service?
Yes, well, I think that this is something that we have to like improve, or we have to enhance in the research area, is to make clinical studies, because without clinical studies we cannot like really have like health claims in foods that then we can use it as a commercial marketing tool. So I think that clinical studies are very important in the research area. Then to go to the FDA, or in Mexico with COFEPRIS, to ask for having something in the foods like a label, then we can use it as a tool for marketing. And that's something that in Mexico changed a lot now. The law for labeling had changed, and now we cannot put nothing in the label to say that something has a special functionality in the human body in foods. So that I think that that's something that we have to work also as a team, academia, government, and industry, to have the opportunity to go to the FDA or with the regulatory agencies, and to work together to make those clinical trials that then we can use it as a source for making these labels or these health claims that are, I think, that are very, very important for communicating the importance of this personalized nutrition.
Thanks. Janice, you mentioned, ADM's focus on making this a widely accessible kind of tool for people. You want this to be something that everyone can have. So I'm curious to understand kind of where we're at now. Is this more of a premium product and service? Can there be personalized nutrition for everyone? Where do we kind of stand right now?
Well, so we are seeing this evolve in the marketplace. And, yes, definitely it is not mass market at this point, although it's, available more and more readily in different forms. But, what we're seeing that's really exciting is it being used as a tool to increase people's diet quality. And, even if there's no, you know, intervention or assessment per se, the messaging around personalization is one that's gaining more and more traction in just everyday nutritional discourse. In fact, you probably know, hopefully everybody knows, March was National Nutrition Month, and a lot of different professional organizations focused on their messaging of personalize. Personalize your plate is one example. And, so we're seeing more and more of that messaging. And so now as the market opportunities evolve, it'll be less of a leap for consumers to really take part in that and hopefully reap the actual nutrition benefits that come along with it. If nothing else, just the behavioral effects of personalization on changing people's behaviors, even stepwise, to increase the overall quality of their diet patterns, that can have some real substantial impact on public health. And from a product development standpoint, as we start to understand more and more the specific interactions of nutrients and health parameters, for example, and using the example of the microbiome, I mean, that's just like such a great, as yet untapped resource for bringing a lot of these health and wellness benefits to fruition. And so I think a lot of these research programs are going to bring us closer and closer to understanding how not only macronutrients like proteins, carbohydrates, and fats and fibers, how those affect the microbiome, populations and health promoting effects, but also things like phytonutrients and lots of other probiotics and postbiotics. And, that's something we're really focused on too, is developing these postbiotic ingredients that can work in products that work. So there are no limitations as to processing, where probiotics right now are kind of limited in their scope of availability and health in food products. So, there's a whole lot of opportunity out there for innovation to support personalized nutrition in the marketplace.
Thanks. On that point, I am curious, personalized nutrition is quite broad. There's a lot of different approaches to it. When using testing, in the case of Baze and DayTwo, I want to understand better what the accuracy looks like. How accurate are these tests that you're using? How granular can you actually personalize nutrition to an individual? What does that look like? And then maybe we'll have Daniel follow up with kind of what he's researching in the lab. With Alex?
Yeah, so again, Baze, we, in our first several years of the business, was entirely focused on developing the custom panel that we use for the blood analytics. So for us, accuracy was always a key component of the product. And then following that, it was how do we make sense of this data in a way that is actually meaningful for the end user. So at the end of the day, I think, as Daniel would mention to the research, I mean, you're not going to get meaningful results if the data is bad that's going into it. So at the end of the day, that the accuracy needs to be there. Although what I would say in terms of either accuracy or, I mean, where we see the strongest insights is actually looking at this data longitudinally. So seeing how a person's levels are adjusting over time, tracking maybe more of the qualitative types of metrics around how they feel and how this is actually impacting their sleep or stress or energy. So I mean, the point in time test is important, but I really see like personalization and personalized nutrition as more of a kind of adopted behaviors, and you really start to see that impact over time. So from an analytics perspective, while understanding, I mean, it's fairly binary, right? In the beginning, if you're deficient at this point in time, then there's a program of supplements that can bring you into a optimal range. But I mean, the stronger insights and the more interesting types of learnings come as you start to see how your individual body reacts to that. And that's something you won't know on that first test. So I think like a more broad perspective on that is there needs, I mean, from our perspective, there needs to be some kind of customer relationship that exists between the personalized nutrition startup or CPG that allows you to start to kind of create this ongoing feedback loop, because without that, you're not really going to be able to get the unique insight around how does that individual react specifically to your program.
Yeah, so, well, for us, well, we are etched in science, right? So we started out of a really large clinical trial, and we've been, you know, true to it since then. But the publication of Cell that was published in Cell of November 2015 on personalized nutrition shows the accuracy of the algorithm, and it is explained, you know, in R, and how much of the variance between people it does explain compared to other methods. Other methods being, you know, looking at calories or looking just at the carb combination, carb count in the food. And they showed, and we continue to show that, you know, if carbs will explain about 15% of the variability across people, the algorithm can explain 3 times more that, more opposed to 50% of the variability across people. So it's very accurate. We have shown that we, as we launched, I kept saying, we can't just stay here in Israel. Everybody will think this works only on these crazy Israelis. And we need to show this on the US, which is the population we were targeting. So we did a replication of the Weizmann trial at the Mayo Clinic, and we showed similar results, also published in peer-reviewed journals. So for us, this is a very precise science. And the way we are personalized, it's really personalized for each person. We are now, since we have so much data collected, we do see now insights that are more generalized, still very personalized, but more generalized than what we saw in the beginning. So we do see trends. I think DayTwo probably has the best average response now on blood sugar from foods, just because we have so much data. But we still remain very, you know, true to the accuracy and give a really personalized score. So you can actually build whatever meal you want. You can, you know, say I want chicken and rice and broccoli, and I'm drinking a glass of wine and I'm eating chocolate. And this is all a meal that needs to be scored. You can't just look at a certain food. It doesn't matter. You don't eat an ingredient, or you don't eat a food, you eat a full meal. And this is, I'm just looking at blood sugar. I'm not saying that, you know, ingredients, I mean, I'm looking here at the people around the room, and I'm saying there's so much room for collaboration. We're looking at one thing on balancing blood sugar levels, and there's so much that could be added by having the industry collaborate with each other and really tie in additional things. And then on the impact side, I again agree, Alex, with you, because, you know, we monitor A1C and we monitor time and range and all the stress levels and weight, and we have to show impact. Our business model is actually built on the impact that we're showing. So I'm so with you on the fact that just putting a solution out there but then not measuring it, right, in your case the supplements, seeing how people really fix their nutrition deficiencies, is exactly where this industry needs to be.
And I think there's a great opportunity for, again, that convergence of health and wellness. And so the importance of measuring, you know, these tangible biomarkers, but also the less tangible qualitative type perceptions. We know that personalization increases the perception of benefit. And that's a really great opportunity for brands, for example. We know that personalization motivates behavior change. So again, from a public health perspective, if it can incrementally, you know, increase people's diet and lifestyle habits that are more leaning toward promoting health, like that could be a really exciting opportunity. And we also know that it increases adherence. So again, opportunity for brands, but also to use as a tool to promote widespread public health.
Yes. I don't know if I can share a little bit my screen, because I would like to show something very quick.
I think it should be
yes.
able to. There we go.
So this is a recent publication that we had in this this journal, Trends in Food Science and Nutrition, that is one of the most important journals in food science. And in here, we publish the procedure that we follow to design smart foods combinations. Smart food combinations or combination to design dietary supplements. And here is the general protocol that we follow. In this publication, we explain a lot of the interaction that can have different compounds and how can we define if one interaction is synergistic, antagonistic, or additive. And then we propose this protocol to design these smart combinations in the form of dietary supplements, beverage, or foods. So what we do first is the definition of the chronic disease, where we want to have the effect when designing the food. So first we select the chronic disease, and sometimes we select cancer. Colon cancer is one of the diseases that we have more research, and here is where the microbiome has a very important like rule, because and also all the availability of the compounds is very important to test when designing a personalized food, because we have to ensure that the compound or the nutrient is going to reach the colon and is going to reach the microbiome to change the population of microorganisms. So we select here the chronic disease, and then we select the nutraceutical candidates. And when selected the nutraceutical candidates or the compounds, we have to take care about all these factors, like the activity, the bioavailability, that is very important. We have to test with digestion tests, with absorption tests, and also then we have to go with clinical trials, with animal models, with in vitro testing. And once we select the nutraceutical candidates, that normally we select nutraceutical candidates that act in different targets. For example, when we work with colon cancer, we select with one nutraceutical that can avoid or prevent angiogenesis, or one nutraceutical that can work in the prevention of metastases. So we have a combination of nutraceuticals that then are going to work synergistically in the prevention or treatment of the disease. Then we evaluate the nutraceutical in vitro. We evaluate different combination of the nutraceuticals to define if they work in a synergistic way. And then we determine the interaction between the nutraceuticals, we establish the best combination, and then we develop the effective nutraceutical combination based on these combination studies. Once we select the best combination, then we perform bioavailability studies on the effective nutraceutical combination. We optimize the effective nutraceutical combination, making, depending on the form that we want this combination in, as a dietary supplement, or as a food, or as a beverage. Here is very important to take into consideration the shelf life, the acceptability by consumers, because if consumers doesn't like the food or the supplement or whatever, they won't buy the product. And at the end, we also validate our product with animal model and humans clinical trials. And also the shelf life is very important when designing these effective nutraceutical combinations. So this is the general procedure that we follow when designing new effective nutraceutical combinations in the form of foods, dietary supplements, or beverage, or whatever. Okay.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it was very helpful to see what your process is when researching. Now that kind of leads very nicely into my next question, which is about educating the end consumer. It was what you shared was very complicated, and every consumer that sees the label personalized on a product, you know, won't necessarily understand what that means. So I'm curious from each of your perspectives, how are you educating the end consumer on personalized nutrition and what it means?
I think Daniel's review kind of highlights a key, maybe not necessarily challenge, but I think a clear distinction that Janice kind of rose to the surface. I mean, where does personalized nutrition sit? Is it a healthcare initiative where we're like, our only endpoint is finding something that's reimbursable? Or is there also this wellness category where maybe there's more realistic short-term goals that larger CPGs can focus on? I think from an education standpoint, where we started is really around the impact, especially for startups where we're competing in this market, where we're kind of competing on claims, we're competing on price. That impact, and keep coming back to it, but the impact is really the starting place with how we educate consumers around the value of the data that we're collecting. And that data and impact leads, I mean, in our case, to an intended use that is much more in the wellness space. And now as we're starting to kind of get up to speed with more of the needs of a larger CPG, I see our education is starting at that point of wellness. And then we see kind of a 5 to 10 year trajectory where we're kind of working with the consumer, helping them understand the kind of improvements that the industry is making and the kind of additional benefit that's going to be added as kind of research comes to fruition, as we get the results from clinical trials. Because at the end of the day, we do see a world where food is medicine, where it's something that can be part of a treatment regimen, whether it's for diabetes. But I do think there's kind of lower hanging fruit in our current market that can fit more into that wellness space, whether it's around, I mean, more, I guess, commercial metrics around kind of stickiness and adoption and adherence. But really, I mean, our customers see real health impact, whether it's kind of more qualitative sleep and energy metrics. So kind of back to the question, though, I mean, from an education standpoint, is first contextualizing really what is the immediate impact they can see now from taking a personalized versus non-personalized approach, is providing them with the available research and information that can help them understand that. And then really in our case, it's continuing that conversation and education as they work through the program, because to Daniel's point, I mean, we're still generating the data and research to support sort of these more ambitious healthcare focused use cases.
Yeah, well, in my case, we definitely, led the education, the personalized nutrition side when we were talking to B2C. Because it wasn't out there, and there was a lot of excitement around the microbiome, and we got a lot of press and PR, and then the Cell paper, and we were on every stage, I think, worldwide between the scientists, and then when they couldn't go, I would go. So there was a lot of articles around this, but at the end of the day, when you're really coming to make this a scalable solution, I think it will go with the ease of the test. Right? If you have to have a microbiome test, and how simple is it to do, to ship, to come back to, when we actually scaled that, it became much easier. As I said before, when you have so much data, you can sometimes tier it. There's so much information we can now give consumers even before doing the actual test. It's still much better than everything that they have right now. So it could be a tiered approach where for the wellness side, we just collaborated with a company on recipes. We know that there's recipes that maintain blood sugar level much better than other recipes, just on a generalized basis. And I'm kind of against the personalization here, but I think there has to be some tiered approach. Doesn't fit everyone. Again, the cost is a factor. Sometimes for some people it's worthwhile, and for others it's not. So really having that solution that can move between a better generalization to full-fledged personalized nutrition is where I think the CPGs can kind of tap into the science.
Yeah, and it's really exciting how that science is evolving to support this. From a biology perspective, definitely the blood sugar regulation. There's hardcore science that backs that up. And a lot of the other fields are still emerging with respect to, that dearth of evidence that can support these kinds of assertions to promote health. And, so we're starting to, our analytical tools are evolving to make that continuous measurement of these biomarkers more and more feasible. But what does it mean? So you can measure any one of thousands of different molecules in, someone's blood, for example, or sweat. But what does it mean? And what does it mean in the context of disease risk and development over time? And I think that's something that's really important to consider, is that a lot of these conditions develop over time. And so it's really that longer term opportunity of increasing the healthfulness of behavior and diet choices that can really have the impact. And so, I think from a nutrition science perspective, there's a lot of hyperbole out there that's associated with precision nutrition and personalized nutrition. And I think that clouds a lot of the actual potential for this to have real impacts in people's lives. But, we're getting there and one step closer every single day. And, just raising that awareness among consumers of the potential of this to positively affect their health, that's really exciting. And so, I do kind of think sometimes, is there a danger of, too much promise or raising expectations in a way that we can't meet right now? And, maybe so, but as these research initiatives come to fruition and that data are made available to, the businesses and the general public to really fine tune these artificial intelligence tools, I mean, this is going to be really super exciting in the future from a health and, public health perspective. It's just really cool.
Yeah. I really liked what you said about, there's kind of this maybe scale or gradient between personalized and generalized nutrition, and that maybe it's not so black and white, and that in the future we may see something kind of sitting in between being hyper personalized and then just more generalized as it stands today. But I would love to look 5-10 years down the line now and get your perspectives as leaders in this space, what you think the future of personalized nutrition will look like in a decade. Alex, maybe you want to kick us off there again?
Yeah, and Jamie, I think that's an important point in realizing there's not kind of personalized or not personalized, because I feel like that in a sense can sometimes handcuff like piloting and early decisions around just kind of dipping your toe into the market, because I think there's kind of really real impact you can make from kind of simpler, lower touch, lower investment types of initiatives into personalization that can have a more immediate impact. My perspective in the 5 to 10 year horizon for personalization is a data centric one. I think, as Jana said, data collection becomes simpler as some of these tools become more ubiquitous. I think approaching this market from a CPG or retail perspective will come with an understanding that customers have the data they need to make the right decisions, and it will be marketing towards those needs and that data. It will be creating products that kind of leverage the insights from that data. So it will kind of move beyond the stage that we're in, where we're really generating unique data points to fill sort of the gaps in availability of having the inputs to put into these models. It will be at a point where it will be much more accepted, and people will have this type of data, and then CPGs and as you go to market, you'll already be able to incorporate that into your strategy. So really in that sense, personalization will have all of the inputs required, and then it will be much more of a kind of go to market type of focus.
Yeah, and I think go ahead.
No, just keeping the order, but go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Alex makes a great point. I think that, the accessibility of these measurement opportunities for consumers, combined with the evolution of the research that allows us to better use these artificial analytics or artificial intelligence tools to more reliably, predict outcomes based on a minimal selection of biomarkers to give the consumers actual, tangible value in their outcomes.
Yeah, and I'm of course totally biased to say that in the 5 to 10 year time frame, we will be so deep in the microbiome and so much research. I mean, we're doing it with the Weizmann Institute, and I know the amazing things that they are doing, not just with us, but across the microbiome space and others that are researching this. I know it will be just a commodity, right? I'm waiting for the day that people will just have this, full shotgun sequencing test done on a yearly basis. And then we can just come on top of that with all the tools and just have all that information pulled in without us sending them to blood tests or sending them to get the microbiome test and all that. So I think the way I see the microbiome research evolving, we will be able to have solutions for the personalized nutrition just for better health of the gut microbiome, because we will understand that. We today see what a healthy gut microbiome is, what a gut microbiome looks like when somebody has prediabetes or diabetes, or you can predict this today through the microbiome, and this is just the beginning, right? So I really believe that between the blood test and the gut microbiome test, we will be able to personalize nutrition for people in such a way that will really make a change in the way they, in the health and the way they're supposed to be eating.
Okay, very interesting, the points of everyone. I also think that the intersection between artificial intelligence and biotechnology will be very important in the near future for personalized nutrition. And also, I think that now we are doing research on personalized nutrition, but I think that that research will help to go to generalized nutrition, not to stay in personalized nutrition, because I think that we are going to learn with the use of artificial intelligence and with open data, that we need open data because we don't have a lot of open data, and it's something that we need. I think that we are going to develop foods that then using this approach of personalized nutrition that then can be used for a generalized type of people that follows or has certain biomarkers, or then we are going to be able to migrate from personalized to generalized nutrition with all these data that we are generating now.
Great, thanks. That about wraps up my questions that I had prepared. We have a ton of really interesting questions from our audience that have already begun to pour in. So I'm going to start asking some of those questions to our panelists. So we do have a question about emerging economies where access to health is generally just more difficult. How can precision nutrition work for consumers with low purchasing power? I think, Janice, you might be an interesting person to kick us off with this, given your expertise around public health.
Yeah, so I think that's the really exciting opportunity, is to make some of these technologies available to those mass market populations. And, the first thing that has to happen is to get them to be more accessible in terms of, the invasiveness of some of these procedures. But I think the app is something we're starting to see more and more of, and actually putting those inputs into something like that. Again, I'm not quite sure how it will evolve to where, there's a piece of technology that a user can wear, But, as we've seen with every new technology that's launched, originally, the prices are really high, and then they come down to a point where they're more widely accessible. And so I think that's where the opportunity will lie. But again, that's, several years out. But, in linking that to the food producers that are making those products to enhance the diets of the wearers of this technology. And what does that look like? And so again, that's where the real future opportunity is from a public health perspective, and also from a brand perspective, as companies, figure out the logistical issues with providing specialized products to consumers to meet their individual needs.
Yeah, maybe just to quickly, I think Daniel's last point really gets at, I think, another opportunity here. I mean, I think the opportunity in collecting this data at a scale that we're now collecting it at, whether it's blood or microbiome, I mean, I think it's unrealistic to think that there won't be generalized learnings that could be more broadly applied. So to Daniel's kind of perspective of, I mean, we're kind of at personalization stage, but it could also help inform more of your generalized nutrition. I think there's going to be a lot of learnings that come out of the next couple of years as this data gets analyzed that can be more broadly applicable. So people in some of these other markets, they can benefit from the learnings from personalized nutrition in a more generalized way.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything to add. I think that's totally right. Maybe just one thing is that, again, we're always looking at the consumers, but we need to remember that the public health aspect, right? Sometimes, and you look at the US, right? There's Medicaid, which is the insurance for the government insurance for all the poor population, which is huge in the US, and they have, food deserts and really a problem to be accessible to food, but they still cost the system a lot. So it is worth paying, and we have programs with Medicaid exactly to do that, because we will save money at the end of the day if we get people into better health. And so I think it really depends on the economy and it depends on the country. But some of them will support these initiatives even before it becomes readily available, just because of the costs of healthcare.
It's really interesting. We have, as we talked about the microbiome quite a bit throughout our earlier questions, we have some questions around that. So there's still a lack of awareness around gut health, let alone personalized nutrition. What do you think the reasons are for that, and what needs to happen so that consumers are more informed specifically around the microbiome and gut health?
Who wants to take it? Or me? I mean, everybody here is touching microbiome, and at least three of us. But I believe it's really a new area of research, right? I even say myself, I started this 6 years ago, looking at the Weizmann Institute and this idea. And when I approached it, I knew, good bacteria, bad bacteria, something with the yogurt, some probiotica. That was like the end of my knowledge. 5 years later, there's so much more knowledge in the world, and I think people at least know what the gut microbiome now is, and that there's trillions, and there's so much education going on just because it's a really new frontier of medicine. And there's national initiatives all over Europe and the US and in China and everybody. And I think that's just an evolvement of how new frontier of science evolves out, right? And so as the startup scene, and some public companies, we just saw a few days ago another company go public on, and so I think that's just education that's going to happen as this become readily available. And then as we have more and more solutions that really change and drive health changes, again, I believe this is just going to be another, just like a blood test. I have a slide from 5 years ago showing this marketplace in which, Alex, as you said, all this data is available, and all we need is to come with our applications based on it. And it will be just another standard test that everybody has to take at least once a year.
Yeah, and we've been at the forefront of microbiome research
Right.
for a long time. And what's really exciting is we're just now starting to scratch the surface of its potential to modulate health. And So I think from a consumer awareness perspective, definitely the phrase gut health is up there. Every consumer would probably admit to knowing what that is. But if you dig a little deeper, like, what do they understand about gut health? And so, we're starting to see a lot of messaging as the gut and the microbiome is the center of health and wellness. And, we're starting to understand how that's true more and more every single day. And so what we're starting to do at ADM is not only understand what the role of the different populations within the microbiome can be to promote health, but also how foods and bioactives and other compounds can affect those populations and their functionality. And so there's still a whole lot of outstanding questions there. And so again, this kind of amorphic gut health, that's probably where we should stick around from a consumer messaging perspective until we have some more tangible, potential effects of how modulation of the microbiome can really, benefit them. And we're getting there. So, we've looked at, mapping different populations and health promoting populations and understanding what specific nutrient substrates they prefer in order to maximize their growth and minimize the growth of, less optimal microbiome populations. And so, that's pretty standard fare at this point. But 5 years ago, that was like super cutting edge, just amazing. Right. And so, the way that science is evolving is so rapid, and it's really being facilitated by all of these government initiatives out there that are starting to funnel research funding priorities, to answering some of these basic fundamental questions. And it's from there that this market is going to launch. And so again, to be determined, will that happen in 5 years, in 10 years? I think yes and yes. And, it's just, again, it's a really exciting time for both the science, but also the consumer aspects as well.
Yes, and I think that education has to go through since the elementary school, I think, because kids also needs to know what is a microbiome, and that sometimes the kids educate the parents with the information that they got from the school. So I think that going through education, but at the basic level, I think that will also help this personalized nutrition market.
Thanks. So we did talk about scalability as kind of a main friction point as far as personalized nutrition. We do have a question about the invasive nature of some of these tests. What about like, how can we address this issue? How are companies already addressing this issue or thinking about, mitigating that?
Yeah, and maybe just to start. So I think we're honest in acknowledging that a blood test is something that is still kind of becoming an adopted behavior in terms of self-administering it and getting a blood test outside of the clinic, right? And I think kind of side point is I think this is going to be one of the key challenges in personalized nutrition as you think about the global market, just because there's differing expectations around who pays for what when it comes to healthcare. I think in the US, there's a little more kind of self-managed self-investment in health as opposed to some European markets, for example. But for us at Baze, the way that we addressed it first and foremost was identifying the right partner from a blood collection standpoint. So really finding what is the lowest kind of friction process and approach to getting the right sample was really where we started. So we partnered with an organization that creates a simple blood collection device that's, painless and simple to ship back and forth. So really just facilitating an experience that probably exceeds the expectation. If you went in and just got a blood draw, for example, that was really our first focus, was how do you create an experience that actually is enjoyable for the user. The second point is, again, I think with these more invasive procedures, it also comes with increased costs, whether it's from a device standpoint, from a sample logistics standpoint. So we have to ship our blood overnight back to our lab, for example. So ultimately, there's a higher cost. So with that, I mean, our go-to-market and our marketing approach is really kind of hitting on those 2 points around the convenience aspect of the device and the expectations of actually collecting that sample to kind of alleviate as much as possible the apprehensions associated with getting a self-administered blood draw. And then also, again, kind of back to the impact, I mean, you need to justify to the user that this is better than just filling out a survey, right? And I think that will be the case when you're asking consumers to collect stool samples or really do anything kind of above and beyond something that they may immediately be comfortable with. But I think that continues to be justified as the research comes out, the impact messages come out. So I think the willingness to pay will track with the kind of perceived value of the product. And then the last thing I'll say is, I mean, anything that helps the customer see this in this kind of healthcare type of scenario, whether it's like ability to pay with FSA, we've seen a huge lift in just terms of kind of adoption and interest when they can actually see some other kind of correlating justification that this is something that's health focused.
Yeah, and for us, again, collecting a stool sample and starting to do this 5 years ago is of course was not trivial, but we did invest a lot in the collection kit. So we tried to make the process as easy as possible. And we're talking about stool, it's all about the timing, right? It's all about, do I have to do this right now and then freeze it and take it to my doctor's office and I need to do it? So no, so you're trying to get it to a point that you can just, put it in your bathroom, and whenever the next time that you feel like doing it, just do it, and then you don't have to freeze it, and you can just put it in the mail because it comes with this stabilizer. We collaborated with a company called DNA Genotech, who has the, I think, best in class microbiome collection kit, and it really took away the pressure that has to do with the timing of the test, and then it's as simple as we can get it procedure. Again, going into commodity, and I'm hoping that in a few years this is just done just like any other test, and then we can use the results, is where I'm hoping this will go at some point.
Okay, what we are doing here in Jalisco, we are working with the Ministry of Health, and we have a program in the gas stations where once the people go to gas stations, they for free they can get like the measurement of their like indicators for the metabolic syndrome, like the blood, their circumference of the body, etc. And we are getting a lot of data from different parts here of Jalisco. We want to know where are the main places where we have metabolic syndrome, because we want to have a preventive program in those places. So we are taking those information for free, and then we analyze the data. We give to the people that goes to these cabins, these places. We go a QR, and then they can know if they are they have some if they are going to develop soon some of the diseases related with the metabolic syndrome, and then we give them like a pass to go to a doctor to start taking this prevention program. But that's the way we are getting data here in Jalisco with this free program, and then we are collecting this data and we are analyzing all this data. So probably by doing these free programs, we will be able to have more information for personalized nutrition.
Great. Shifting gears a little bit, what about tech companies like Apple or Fitbit that are already capturing people's health data? What role do they play in this kind of personalized nutrition ecosystem? Not sure if there's someone who wants to kick us off with that question.
Well, I mean, in the immediate sense, those are really great tools for consumers and wearers to be able to immediately assess what their progress is. And, definitely those, as your physiological self changes due to, your exercise intervention or dietary modifications, having those, type of tracking tools lets you see how your heartbeat during exercise changes. And, it's just a way to kind of reinforce the consumer's progress in, after having adopted some of these new habits. So can those, I guess the next logical step might be, how can those be interfaced to, address some of these personalized nutrition types of measurement needs? We're also seeing the Apple Watch has the pulse ox opportunity on it, so, with the demand will come the technology to meet it. And so I think, that's where the industry is headed, something wearable, something that's not, too, giant and cumbersome, and that makes taking continuous measurements simple. And that also provides the surrogate markers to be able to predict, some sort of benefit and what that intervention, how that intervention will support it.
That's really interesting. We have another question that kind of shifts gears again. What do you think about the intersection of the gut microbiome and the synergies with the future of lab-grown foods? Is there an opportunity there between personalized nutrition and this, increasingly growing lab-grown food industry?
Janice, I believe this is yours.
Well, so let's think about that for a second. So if you're talking about modulating the microbiome, the first thing that needs to happen is that what you eat needs to make it all the way down to your colon. And so, when we think about lab grown things, those aren't going to exist by themselves in a food product. So you'll have this food matrix. And so we think a lot about that at ADM, and we've got a whole group that is specialized in delivery technology. So looking at, how do we get those potential microbiome modulating ingredients to their site of activity, which is in the colon? And so, and where do they need to be, and what acts on them, and how do they modulate that environment that's in the gut microbiome? So I think the question is, way larger than just the fate of lab grown stuff. It's definitely how we approach product development in a more holistic way that takes into account what we're trying to accomplish in modulating a particular microbiome environment, and then how we accomplish that through both delivery systems and unique ingredients that can have that effect.
Thank you for that. That was very interesting, and I think paints a really interesting perspective on what the future intersection of both lab-grown food and personalized nutrition will look like. We have a question regarding, let's see, we have a bunch of questions pouring in, and we only have less than 10 minutes left to get through them, so I'm going to have to hand pick some right now. Let's see. So I think this might be an interesting question for Daniel. Are we on a collision course with the pharma industry with personalized nutrition, accelerated by the impact of AI and understanding our microbiome? What are your thoughts around this, Daniel?
I wasn't hearing at the beginning. Can you repeat the questions?
Yeah, the question is, are we on a collision course with the pharma industry, and how will the pharma industry kind of play into personalized nutrition in the future?
The pharma industry, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I think that that's something that Alex mentioned, that we cannot confuse and we cannot, we need to have like the line between foods and pharma. So foods are not going to be like medication. Food are going to be like a tool to prevent diseases. Foods is I think, and also the main focus of personalized nutrition is the prevention of diseases. It's not the treatment of diseases. And the pharma industry is more focused on the treatment And I think that to get or to design a personalized nutrition for the treatment or of something is going to be quite difficult. I think that the personalized nutrition is going to be a lot in a way to provide the deficiency of basic nutrients like vitamins, minerals, and I think that that is something that is going to be very important in the personalized nutrition. And also using phytochemicals that can work together to prevent diseases. But the pharma is more on the treatment of different diseases or in the diagnosis of different diseases. And I want to add something to the previous question that was about the foods in the lab. I think that 3D printing is going to be a technology that can be used a lot for personalized nutrition. I think that 3D printing can generate foods with a specific like mixture of nutrients that can provide what is needed by a specific person, right? So 3D printing, I think that is going to be an important trend in 3D print in personalized nutrition.
Thanks. Lihi, I think maybe you have a
Yeah, I
different
want to.
perspective.
Well, it's just our personal experience with pharma. I remember a few years ago I was on this panel with the Financial Times in London or something on pharma and personalized nutrition, and I sat there and I said I'm going to be the enemy because they sell drugs for diabetes, and I'm coming in and saying I know how to with personalized nutrition. And it took a few years, but we have a collaboration with Roche, for example. Other companies are collaborating with pharma. I think that pharma today, since this is becoming something real now, food as medicine is real, and personalized nutrition as a subset of that. And so I think they're trying to get on board and go up. They call this the Beyond the Pill agenda. Right, so they're not by any means intending to stop marketing their pills. Of course, drugs are there and they're helpful, but I think they understand that you can't just pump people with drugs, and they have to watch what they're eating as well. So I do see some slow movement, and I really think it's going to converge.
So I mean, and I would support that also, but take it a little bit differently in that, food in the traditional sense is not like medicine because it is a blunt tool, whereas medicine, drugs, they have specificity, right? But the future of food, I think, could look a whole lot different. And I think we can incorporate specificity into food products that have predictable effects on longer term health outcomes. And I think that's the real exciting opportunity to work hand in hand with pharma to create these new hybrid type of opportunities that bring new benefits to consumers and patients.
Yes, I agree with both of you. Like, I think that there is a line, and also we can design foods that can be used also as medicine. If we know what is the target, probably we can design foods to go from a pre-disease state to go to a healthier state, but probably going from a disease state to go to a healthier state is going to be very difficult. But the food industry is going to, if we work in the design of preventing food, we are going to take some of the market of the pharma, because we are going to have less people with diseases. But we have to work in the middle, like working on the design of foods that take people from pre-disease states to healthier states. And one of the targets, I think, that is inflammation, because inflammation is the state of the body that is going to generate all these diseases. So if we work in the design of foods that can prevent inflammation, we are going to take people from this pre-disease state to healthier state, and we are going to avoid people or to reduce the number of people that is going to need medicines, and that's where probably there is like a fight between the pharma and the food industry, right?
Yeah, no, in that sense, I agree. If we are able to prevent, then they will not. I think in the realistic view of the world, people do, not everybody invests in prevention. Look at the US, for example. They do not, the payers will not invest in prevention because people switch off payers all the time. So there's no real incentive, different from Israel where, you stick to your HMO, so people will invest in prevention. So I think it's really a mix. And some countries will just not, will let people get sick and then you need to treat them. And, and then I think pharma will get on board. But at least we finished with some controversy on the panel instead of agreeing with each other all the time. It's fun.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was a great place to stop. I think it kind of reflects that personalized nutrition is not going to be personalized just solely to the individual, but also to the regions that personalized nutrition occurs in. So I think there will be really interesting outcomes in the future. And I really appreciate all of our panelists' time. To our audience, we hope this was an informative and inspiring conversation that offered unique insights into where we currently are in regards to personalized nutrition and to where we are heading. Thank you again to our panelists for your insights and for that bit of controversy at the end. I really liked hearing the difference in perspectives from each of you. And that brings us to a close. Daniel, we did have some interest in your research paper as well. So if you are open to sharing that, we would love to forward that. I think there was some interest from our audience.
Sure.
So the panelists as well, please. I wanted to.
Sure, I will send it to all of you.
Great, thank you. So we'll share that out with those who asked in the Q&A. Thank you all again. Really appreciate your time.
For the opportunity.
Thank you.
Great meeting everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.